Cool. Okay. Going to talk numbers first. So every year we announce what the spending numbers are about this time of year for the prior year. So we had an incredible year in 2019. Visitor spending went up almost 4% over 2018. So $1.4 billion in visitor spending came into our community last year, into Dane County. We over 22,000 jobs. When we have time, I can talk about some of the downtown numbers, because we also always get downtown numbers also, which are very important to you all. But in our community, 22,000 jobs depend on visitors that come to Dane County. Along the bottom of the screen, it shows the breakdown of the visitor spending. So food and beverage is the largest piece of the visitor dollar. Oftentimes people assume it's lodging, but what we have to realize is not every visitor spends the night, and not every visitor that spends the night stays in a public accommodation. They might stay with a friend or a neighbor or a child. Lodging comes in a close second, and then followed by retail. And for the first time, recreation sort of even top transportation. But this gives you a sense of where that 1.4 billion, how those dollars are circulated.
Hey, Deb, we're not seeing the number slide still, I don't think. Madeline, can you click to the number 2 slide? We're still seeing the PowerPoint view.
So Deb, you just have to click on the number 2, since I'm not sharing anymore. Sorry, everybody.
You're doing great.
Oh.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Is it up now?
No.
Oh gosh.
I think, Deb, you might want to change the slideshow presentation.
So they couldn't hear you. Now they can hear you.
We're all learning so much.
There you go.
There you go.
Is it there?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So those are the numbers, everybody. And we'll make sure everybody gets the deck after this. When you look at the bottom of the slide, you see the breakdown of where the 1.4 billion is spent. The 2.3 billion is when it turns over from the actual vendor and the worker into the economy. So over 2.3 billion came into Dane County, was circulated in Dane County by visitors last year. Now, what we have to talk about is what's happening today. Can you see this slide? Okay, so to date, in terms of what we've tracked, we've had 41 events canceled that we have contracted for. Those events would have brought 32.5 million into the community and booked 65,000 room nights plus, and brought over 80,000 people. So those are events that we contract, but that does not indicate a lot of events are booked directly with hotels or Monona Terrace or the Alliant Energy Center. These are only the events that we track. So the number is enormous of the amount of cancellations that are pouring into the community. On the right-hand side are a lot of those, sort of legacy events that happen every year. First one that fell was WIA boys basketball, and then it's just cascaded from them. And all of these are, and there are dozens of events that have canceled that are community events, but also are very attractive to visitors and a reason why visitors come here. What we're trying to do is track what they're telling us in terms of forecasts in terms of what is the consumer behavior, what can we expect in terms of future travel. So these are 3 very distinct studies that we're following, but we're tracking many. And I'm sure Greg and Amy and people in our industry are tracking also many. The first one, travel sentiment study. So we're getting a lot of studies tracking what people are saying, consumers like you and I, about, based on COVID, what's happened to our plans on travel. And I would bet almost everybody on this meeting had some, whether it's a short or a long haul trip plan somewhere in the near future. Well, 50% of consumers have canceled their trips completely. 45% reduced their travel plans. 22% dropped from flying to driving vacations. And then obviously there's a drop from international to domestic. What this is telling us is, it's really hard to see these numbers, but the good piece for us, the positive information, is that people will be taking driving vacations, and Madison sits in a real sweet spot, if you think about it, about the enormous metro populations between Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Quad Cities, what that means in terms of the population that we hope we can tap into for taking leisure travel, driving travel, because that's what most people are going to be most comfortable doing to begin with. This next slide, huge, very difficult to talk about, but the U.S. Travel Association, our National Trade Association, believes that 8 million jobs were lost due to the fall in the hospitality and the tourism industry. Since this was before May, that number has probably climbed. They originally thought it would be 4.6 million. It's almost twice that. This slide talks, and it's difficult, the numbers are small. This is demand on hotel rooms, and this is from a company called STR that hotels subscribe to provide their daily input in terms of occupancy, demand, average rate, and what they call RevPAR, which is revenue per available room. So dramatic drop. The first left bar was March. The second left bar is April. So from mid-March to April, it just plummeted. So demand went down 81% in April. So it's a dramatic drop. And then it talks, this slide goes through about 18 months, through December of 21. And it shows a very slow climb. Some of us think this isn't even an optimistic climb. There's a lot of data that's telling us that to return to the rates that hotels were charging in 2019, and maybe 4 or 5 years before we see those sorts of rates. Demand may come back, but rate may be harder. This next slide talks just about hotel occupancy in Dane County. The pink bars are from 2019, from January through December. The red bars are January to April. So we went from about a 60+% occupancy market-wide in April of 2019 to about 19% in 2020, this April. This was through April 25th. So dramatic, catastrophic drop. And I will tell you the number that really matters to hotels is what I said before. It's called RevPAR, revenue per available room. And that is down 77% year over year. And that is really where hotels track their revenue growth, and just catastrophic drop. In terms of recovery, I talked a second ago about what segments we see coming back, and this leisure within a reasonable drive time is what is anticipated will come back first. So again, we feel like we're in a good position for that. Business travel, probably second. The last business to come back will be group, sports events, conventions, festivals. And so much that depends on what are the guidelines, what are the protocols, what are the capacity restrictions that health officials, government officials will put. And also there is a back end that people have to recognize. There's a risk management piece for people who put on events. It's what is the liability if you're hosting an event or a group if people get sick. And so that is really not been flushed out yet, is what is the liability and the risk associated with putting gatherings together. So you've got convention professionals, associations, companies who are tiptoeing around the idea of pulling groups together, let alone our athletic department about football games and other festivals and events that we all love. This will be the hardest group to see come back. In terms of us getting ready to spread the message about what to do, we will be emphasizing how safe our community is, the hygienic practices, what we're putting into place as a community, and that we are a safe community in general. We also are working very hard with our partners, Monona Terrace, Alliant Energy Center, the hotels, to really be flexible in meeting visitors' needs and expectations. There are going to be a lot of questions in all of our heads when we travel about, are places clean? Are you going to allow other groups in the building at the same time? As well as what are our cancellation and what we call attrition clauses. We have to be flexible because our competition is going to be stiff. Everybody is going to be after the visitor dollar. And so we really need to be flexible. I talked about communicating best practices. The other piece is that we always want to push forward that we are a welcoming destination, that we are a warm and inviting place, And that will be a big part of our messaging. Recovery, next 6 to 18 months, we want to help people get back to work. I mean, that is the most important thing we can do. And we can do that by getting travelers back as quickly as possible. Collaborating with industry and community partners on opening strategies. I know this is something Jason, Zach, and I have talked about is, you know, how do we bring together the public and the private sector to talk about what are the protocols and guidelines we need to discuss to make sure businesses can be ready. Just because they might say you can open, it doesn't mean that businesses understand what's expected of them. So we want to bring forward the voice of the private sector with the public sector to work together on some pre-opening strategies. We're going to keep our brand strong. We're working on our Stay Home Love Madison, and we just put in a grant to the Department of Tourism, which we hope gets approved. We're going to be working on a theme of the urban outdoors and really pushing that as a great story for people to come enjoy open spaces. Communicating and working with our clients. Our sales team, just so some of you don't know, we reduced our staff by 1/3 almost immediately within 2 weeks of the shutdown. We had to. We knew our resources were going to be in question, and so we are working with a shorter staff. Everybody's taken a reduction in pay, furloughs, but our team's working incredibly hard. And the sales team, because they're fielding all those cancellation calls, plus trying to rebook people and groups as quickly as possible, which we have rebooked 7 groups. We have 6 others that we hope to rebook within the next year. Then elevating the community and government to support tourism for our work. You know, it's one of the reasons, you know, we appreciate Jason inviting us here today, is we want people to understand how important our work is leading this community back. You know, we are the entity that puts the net out there to bring visitors, to catch those visitors, to bring them here. No one else does that. And we have got to get visitors coming here to get those new dollars into our community. The last thing we're working on, what we're calling is that we're tourism strong. We are a really incredibly important industry, but we could use your help. Continue to support local businesses that are open, which I'm sure everybody on this call is doing, from takeout to retail call-ins, whatever you can do. We also ask, if you know of or you're involved with anybody that takes meetings out of town, please keep your meetings here. Keep your business here in the community. That is critical. We want companies or organizations that host meetings, don't take them out of town, bring them here. And the last thing is that we'll welcome visitors to our community. We are all set and ready to go. We're in action right now, and we want it to be when things are open, but we also want to make sure we're ready, but we want to make sure our partners are all ready too. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time to share some of that information.
Deb, thank you very much for your presentation. I think that gives us a very good overview of all of the challenges and the difficulties that the tourism industry is going to. But your leadership is fantastic, and we're lucky to have such a strong leader like you in our community right now. So thank you very much, Deb. We're going to open it up to a few questions for our panel. Again, our panelists are Deb Archer, who you just heard from, the CEO and president of Destination Madison, Greg Frank with the Food Fight Group, and Amy Supple with the Edgewater. Got a few quick questions for everyone. I want you to send your questions in on the chat feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. First question is for Greg and for Amy. How has COVID-19 affected your business and your businesses that you're involved with directly?
Well, I can start out. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the invite for today. You know, imagine one day employing almost 1,200 people and being responsible for them, and then the next day being told that you're done. You have to figure out very quickly, how can you survive? The hospitality, the independent restaurant industry employs 11 million people nationwide, contributing $1 trillion to our economy. And locally, Deb showed that restaurant business is $383 million, I believe, just locally. And we're a nice big percentage of it. So in a matter of a day, we had to figure out how are we going to pay our rent? How are we going to pay our people? How are we going to pay our suppliers? How are we going to adjust short term to the reality that we have now? And then how do we pivot to the long term? The biggest problem we have right now is we have no visibility, no guidance as to when, how, and what that means. And so that creates a ton of uncertainty for us, of course, but really for our people. And that's really the important thing is we feel responsible for the family that we've created. And the restaurant industry is a gathering place. And we have to figure out how do we do this and do it safely and do it profitably. And long answer to a short question, but there's a lot more that we can certainly talk about. And I'm sure Amy is even double that because of the hotel rooms on top of the restaurant piece of it.
Yeah, you know, Greg, I think you said perfectly. I feel a little bit like through this, this industry has been a bit of a, you know, a bellwether and a little bit of the, you know, the leading indicator of what's happening, you know, what's coming down the pike. We've experienced a lot of the things first and been trying to figure things out as we go. You know, I can tell you, you know, from Deb's slideshow, you know, just in the hotel market downtown in March, you know, we were seeing a significant decline in rooms, and we were, you know, in the downtown market, we were between 20 and 25% generally in terms of occupancy, and that is now down in single digits and trending below that. And so, you know, as we look at this, I mean, and you're going into the summer, you know, we're looking at an 85 to 95% decline in our revenues for the next several months, and trying to figure out, you know, can you even stay open through this, and then trying to figure out, if you open, what's the safe way to open? How do you do it? How much more does that cost? Insurance is going to be crazy, you know, and the cost of cleaning and things like that. So, you know, Deb mentioned occupancies may increase, but rates are going to decrease. And I think, you know, for those of us, you know, trying to figure out the formula here, I actually think rates can't decrease because we're looking at, you know, 5% plus costs on trying to just get things to a point where people feel, you know, safe, and our employees feel safe, and we can keep people in that position. But then you layer on it the insurance costs and the liability and all these other things. It's really a challenge, and going to be an interesting few months as we go forward.
I think that brings up a follow-up question that I've heard from several other business industry leaders, that we're managing three things right now in this crisis. First, we're obviously managing the virus and the public health crisis that we have. But second, we're managing the economy. And third, to this question, we're managing anxiety, people's anxieties. I don't think the government necessarily closed down the economy. I think the virus and people's anxieties closed down the economy. How do you get through that anxiety to make sure that your businesses rebound the way you'd like them to?
I was on a webinar this afternoon, and the person speaking said that we have a wicked problem and a social mess, because this is an emotional issue with no clear consensus on any side, and now we have the extremes coming in. So how do we manage expectations and figure out how to do it in a way that that we aren't going to hurt ourselves or others? And it's a really difficult thing. And I don't know if there's a right answer to any of it. We as business people have to be leaders in terms of how to reopen and reopen responsibly. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent and say, I don't believe that our local political leaders have fully accepted the role that the private sector can play. And we need to be out in front of it. We need to be part of the solution to make sure that those anxieties are managed for everybody, for our customers, our employees, and make sure that we can do it in a way that is financially viable as well.
I think too, it's just, you gotta, I think when we develop a solid plan, you have to be able to effectively communicate that plan. So much of what we need to do, I think Greg's exactly right. You have to manage expectations. And so you have to say, we are this, but we're not this. I was just in a meeting before this with our spa director, and a lot of spas are going to the extent of almost giving the impression that, they're medical institute, medical facilities. They're not. And you can't sign up for and tell people, you're at a hospital grade level of sanitation. You're not. I mean, that's the reality. So you just have to say, we're going to have these practices. We're going to make it safe for people. Here are the things we're doing, and you got to communicate as you go forward. And I think it will be just fine if you do that. I really do.
Yeah, and I actually look at this as an amazing opportunity. I've gone through all the phases of grief and everything. And last week I was in my bitterness phase, and this week I'm in let's look forward phase. And we have to reimagine and refocus, and we become better, and we will become better. But we have to have an understanding of timeline and how we can phase this in. And we need support. We need governmental support as well to help us get through.
I think that brings up another follow-up question to that. For all three in the panel, what does the reimagining, what does the restarting look like? How has this changed your industry, and how do you pivot to make sure you continue to be successful?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about, from a destination positioning perspective. We've already started pivoting in terms of what will be the lead message and what is the lead message we're going to start with. And so we're very group focused in terms of sports events, conventions, etc. We will certainly be carrying that banner, but we are going to be leaning into the leisure market and the drive market. And I think I mentioned we're going to be sort of touting this idea of the urban outdoors, because if there's anything all of us have figured out in the last few weeks is we want to get outside and we need to breathe. We need fresh air, and we have so many amazing opportunities to do that. And so, marrying that with whatever sort of creative and innovative things that the chamber orchestra might have up their sleeve for concerts on the square, or, what other things could be done that we can marry the great things that are happening here with the outdoors. And so we are working very hard at, repositioning the destination for that first market, which we believe will be the drive market.
I think too, Greg hit on an important point, which is, you can spend all your time being angry about what happened, and that's not productive. So you have to start to think about what's different, and in our business, what we're spending our time thinking about is we've got a really unique asset, with lots of outdoor space and lots of interesting places. And, if for the next period of time here, we're not going to be able to have, for instance, a wedding that's over 100 people or 50 people for some period. How do you change a wedding? And somebody came up with a crazy idea the other day of doing a progressive dinner, but making that a wedding. So you go from room to room, and every room's a different experience. And I was like, that's a really cool idea. And how fun is that? And I think you have to give people the room to be creative in that kind of space and think about things differently. And begin to, I think our businesses are going to be changed and adapted forever in some way. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe there's some new things. I think the to-go business, the things that people are doing, I picked up actually, Greg, from one of your restaurants yesterday. It's easy, it's fast. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of dig this. and I think that business is here to stay for a long time. That kind of business. So we're going to find some opportunities that come out of this, and we just need to leverage those.
Yeah, the restaurant business has always been how many people can you pack into a small space at one time, and now we're looking at 25% capacity, 50% capacity, and then how do we it was position tables, and how do we change that experience so that we don't lose the connectivity with our guests, and how do we maintain our position in the market and be members of the community. The restaurant community, well, everybody in the hospitality industry contributes so much back to the community. I bet you, Food Fight, well over $200,000 a year back into the community just in-kind donations. And we're a vital part of the community. We were really ecstatic that the community has supported us and other restaurants and other businesses so much during this time. But we have to figure out how do we adapt to the reality of a smaller, and Amy said it before, I don't think we can choose to lower our prices because our profit margins are so slim to begin with. And people in the community, how are we going to communicate the fact that they're going to have to pay more for their experience in order to have the experience that they've had in the past? Because bills do have to be paid. The best in the best of years, a restaurant makes about 8% profit, and we lost that very quickly. And the smaller businesses, Madison has such an amazing food scene, and we have to, and it's so closely knit, we have to make sure that that's maintained. But the smaller players, if we go through June into July, we could be losing them, and we'd be losing a huge vital part of the community. And the competition and the friendliness of the competition, we need to keep that, and it's so important.
Rebecca Prohaska has a good follow-up comment to that. As a consumer, the way local businesses are adapting has been so exciting to see and made it really easier for consumers to support them. Do you see many of those changes staying around? Both the
Oh yeah, definitely. We've had a partnership with Eat Street for a while, and we've solidified that partnership. A wonderful local company, and helping us develop our platform for delivery, for carry out, and we also, most of our restaurants have either family meals or take and bake kind of meals. So it is saying, it's been successful. That's going to be a part of our business going forward, because people are enjoying that, and they're learning that they can support their local restaurant or whatever piece of the community by doing it in different ways than they have in the past. And we just have to figure out, how do we create that social connection? Because I think that's really important within the hospitality business. How do we keep that social connection? So that's the one piece I don't think we have yet.
Yeah, I think people are going to be, as we ramp back up, I think people are going to go through an odd transition here. I mean, I think people have really are going to be surprised at how much they've appreciated the extra time with their family and the extra time of sort of being able to do self-care and and time for thought, and not be on 12 conference calls a day and running from place to place to place. I mean, right now there's you see these endless memes on social media about how much you don't like teaching your children and things like that. But I think when people get away from that again, they're going to be they're going to think about it, and they're going to say, you know what, that some of that time was really well spent time. And I think there will be opportunities, especially around wellness, self-care, and families, that are going to be different, and again, opportunities in the future to really help people to come together in different ways. That's a little less focused on the rat race, and a little more on quality time with others.
I think two of you, Greg and Deb, started to touch on this next question, but I think it's very important about how our local governments support our businesses. I think now is a time when we can reimagine what we are as a city. We can restart and be a better and a different city. And one way that I think we all see is to give more support to local businesses and local restaurants. I've seen several statistics, including one that says between 35 and 75% of independent restaurants will not come back if this lasts more than 3 more months. And those are deafening statistics. And that means we're going to need assistance from the local government. What government support do you think the business and the industry need now so that you can thrive again in the future and continue to be an integral part of our community? We'll start with Deb.
Well, I think we want to make sure that those businesses that, are able to can access all of the relief programs that have been put in place, whether it's federal, SBA, the increased county fund that's going through Dane by Local. We want to make sure that the workers and the businesses get those. In terms of our organization, we are primarily funded through the hotel tax, which is going to be, catastrophically hit. And we are quite concerned about what that level of funding will look like this year and next year and beyond, and whether, as I said, we've already eliminated a third of our staff. If we're going to do our work, we really can't shrink anymore. If people want to see the type of rebound that we want and we deserve to have as a community, so we're going to need, strong support from city leaders in terms of that room tax support for our work. We unfortunately, because we're a 501c6 entity, we do not qualify for any of the federal programs except the EIDL loan. We don't qualify for any. So most organizations like ours around the country are locked out of all of those programs. We've been trying to work with Congress to get us carved in, but we're akin with lobbyists, and so they don't want to be bailing out lobbyists, and we are unfortunately in that boat. So we just don't have a lot of alternative options to sort of prop us up. But we certainly are doing everything we can to get the resource information in the hands of the businesses that we want to see survive and eventually flourish. We hope that, those entities are able to take advantage of that.
I'll start on a national level. The PPP program doesn't really work well for the restaurant industry because we have no certainty as to when we can or will be allowed to reopen fully. So it's a way to keep people employed, but we have absolutely we would run out of the PPP money before we may be able to reopen again. And so it doesn't work well. So there's a group that was formed called the Independent Restaurant Coalition. And they've been lobbying Congress to make changes to the PPP program so that it fits better within the restaurant industry. They've also proposed and are making headway, bipartisan headway, on a $120 billion restaurant stabilization program that would help the restaurant industry through the end of this year, which would be amazingly helpful. On a local level, I do think that the local political leaders have been very, very helpful in terms of vocally supporting our industry. There's been several different programs funded to help small business. I think that's been really good. But locally, they're going to have to bring us into the conversation so that we can work together to create the programs, the messaging to be able to open in a responsible and safe way, and then to promote that. So that's what we need on a local level. They don't really have the money, but they can be really helpful with the communication piece. And a lot of cities have created task forces that have come together. I just had an email from the CEO of the Rockford Chamber, the Destination Management Organization, and they have 10 different working groups with the mayor, and he's chair of one of those groups. And so hopefully those models can be used within our city to help bring all the people together for the right conversations, to do it in a manner that makes sense.
I'm in touch with colleagues around the country, and it's really remarkable what the public-private partnerships that have been built for these recovery task forces in small cities and big cities, and it really will help them be ready. You know, we don't want to have happen what happened. Georgia said you can be open. Well, most of the restaurants there said, we're not ready to open. We don't know what you expect from us. We want to be ready to be open.
Got a question from our board chair, or excuse me, our Economic Development Committee Chair, Ann Morrison. When you were in we had our last hospitality panel at the Economic Development Committee a few months ago, which I know Deb was a part of. We were talking about labor shortages, and now we're talking about layoffs. What are you hearing about the impacts on the lower wage earners, and what resources will they need to come back to fill these jobs?
Well, I know Greg and Amy can talk to this too. I think that the good news is this additional unemployment that will be in place until the end of July. I have to believe for a lot of these workers, it is what is allowing them to survive, because without that other additional $600, you probably know in Wisconsin, you can only collect half of what you made. And of course, some people are on tip wages, so it's really difficult. But that $600 will make the difference between somebody paying their rent or not. But there might be a labor shortage, honestly, if people open before July 31st, because some people are really making more on this unemployment time than they would if they went back to work. So that's actually an issue right now. Not a bad issue, just a real issue that some businesses, if they want to open for July 31st, that's a balancing act. And in the long run, probably won't have a labor shortage for a long time, but that's just my view. Greg and Amy may not share that view, but my guess is even if we're ramping up really well, I think a lot of those workers won't be absorbed for a while, or maybe ever.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at our models as it's probably 3 to 4 years before we're back to where we were last year. And so I think as people think about the issues that are in front of us, of course, there's a lot of stimulus going into the economy now, because this was like it's like a gut punch, and people were just trying to figure out quickly what to do, and a lot of money kind of got thrown at a problem, which was a positive thing, but the government can't keep doing that. And so what I think people really need to be thinking about is when we get 6-12 months down the road and our business levels are 50, 60, 70% of what they used to be, if we're lucky, there's going to be a lot of people out of work and at the lowest income levels, and that's going to be a real issue in the future. I'm convinced of that, because a lot of the restaurants aren't going to come back. That's a reality. Some of the hotels may not survive, and those that do, are not going to be at the business levels they were. So there's going to be high unemployment for a long time.
And we know that as an organization, we are going to be running leaner than we did in the past. And we also know that it's going to take us time to reopen. And we don't know how many people are going to want to come back quickly because of safety issues, because of childcare issues, because of many other issues. And so we're anticipating there's going to be a labor shortage. Short term, we are keeping in close contact with all of the people that we did furlough. Hopefully most, if not all, will come back. But I think the reality is that's not going to happen. So we're still going to have a difficulty hiring people, and for a variety of reasons. We as an industry provide a lot of really wonderful jobs, and also provide a lot of opportunity for people with lower skills that want to move up. And we're not sure, again, if they're going to come back as quickly as we would maybe need them to come back.
I think it's an important point, Greg. You earlier gave a statistic that 11 million people in America work in restaurants. If you add retail and the rest of hospitality and tourism, it's 32 million people in America that are employed in those sectors. That's over 11% of the total workforce. So this is a majorly important issue. Got a question from Joanna Burish. about the fact that we have so many great, wonderful resources here, right? Great restaurants, great bike paths, outdoors, lakes, sort of what Deb is talking about. We're in a good position. Is there an opportunity sort of to put a united front together amongst all of our organizations to make Madison the best comeback city and have the comeback happen more quickly here?
Oh yeah, definitely. And Zach Brandon was saying that a survey shows that Madison is like the 4th or 5th best positioned community in the entire United States as far as potential recovery. And so definitely we all need to come together, put together a program and I think this is where Destination Madison is really a wonderful to be able to promote our brand and get the message out around the country to help us bring people in and really recover. We know it's a wonderful place to visit. We know it's a wonderful place to live and to work. And I think we are really well positioned if we bring the people together and message correctly.
I think it's really, really important that we get some funding to in particular to Deb's organization. I think it's, for us to all come together, we need a really solid, strong regional campaign. So much of the business in the coming months is going to be regional and drive. And if we can't get some money directed towards advertising to the Chicago, Minneapolis, Fox Valley, Green Bay, St. Louis, Indianapolis, to the markets that people will drive from, we're going to miss an opportunity. We are the perfect destination, centrally located for people to come to.
Yeah. And this panel, we might be a little slanted since we have Deb and Amy who contributes a lot in room tax, and then I'm chair of Destination Madison. So maybe we have a little bit of a slant there, but we do know how important it is. And then of course, Jason, Mr. Hospitality.
We got time for one more question. Thank you for your nod to me as a hospitalitarian. I think that's a term I came up with. Deb, is that actually a term, a hospitalitarian?
I don't know if you did or Lene Lavoie at Madison College.
I'll give Lene Lavoie credit. She deserves all the credit. Last, and I think the most important question today for our membership and for the people that are watching, how can our community help your business and industry now and into the future?
Visit us, support us, spend your dollars locally with the independently and locally owned operations. Stay in Madison for a while. This is an amazing place to visit, and if you haven't explored it as a resident, you probably should do that.
Keep your business here. Keep your meetings here. Keep your business here. Invite your friends here when they're ready to travel. Just have a lot of staycations, and I do think that there'll be times when, and I know we did this, that we want to call on you all for, if there's another round of federal funding, how can we get put in that, position? And as Greg said, and Amy, I'm sure agrees, is, keep doing the carryout, keep doing the takeout. You don't have to, going out to eat dinner is great, but you might want to have a picnic with your family outside, and you can order the whole thing and pick it up at a restaurant.
Yeah, I think that's critically important. Number one, the revenue is obviously needed, but I can't express to you how excited people get, when we have a good day on the takeout, like yesterday was a good day, and everybody was just, it just uplifts spirits so much to see that happen. Sorry, my lights just went out. But in the short term, there's something that people could really do to be helpful is when we post things, there's a lot of social media out there, but when you see something that's really good and creative, share it. A lot of our networks are the same people, and we all we have our friends and our groups of friends, but the broader our message can get out there about what we're doing, the better it is. And so when you see something that's fun, creative, something that you tried and it was delicious, just share it on social media, because that reach is critical. And then in the long term, I can't stress enough the message that Deb brought, which was, keep your business meetings here, keep your private dining experiences local, and when it's safe to go back, please do that. So much of our business is based on local group business. You know, our banquets business and our private dining and what have you. I know Greg's got a massive amount of that as well. You know, that's a huge chunk of our business. And if nobody has meetings and people aren't coming to town, you know, that's going to be really hard to recover from. So as a business community, you know, the same message about doing the to-go orders. You know, as we get reopened, there's got to be a lot of messaging and support from the community on doing meetings and dinners and things like that for all of us to survive. That's going to be important.
And your celebrations, your weddings, your anniversaries, your birthdays.
And we'll make them fun. We're coming up with a lot of good ideas.
All right, I know I said that was the last question, but I've got one more because so many people that have asked the same question. Deb, you get the last word. How can our community and DMI and our members make sure that you get the funding you need to succeed to keep getting tourists back here to create the best quality of life in downtown and our whole community?
Great question. I think that your board, your economic development committee, to send a message to the mayor and the room tax commission that should be the priority for the investment for the room tax. They've added a lot of things to the room tax pot over the years, and they're all worthy causes, but they are not out there throwing a net out to bring visitors here. We're really the only entity in that mix. And so really, your voice would, I think, carry a lot of weight. Mike Revere's on that. Sherry Carter's on that in terms of alders. But your voice carries that. You are a very influential group, and I appreciate you asking, but it could make a world of difference.
Well, thank you all to this panel, to Deb Archer, the president and CEO of Destination Madison, to Amy Supple, the senior vice president and chief operating officer of the Edgewater Hotel, and to Greg Frank, the principal and the community development. I always forget your title, Greg. Sorry, vice president of community
partner.
Food Fight and partner. Thank you so much for your insightful words today. I know this is a very difficult time for the hospitality industry, but thank you for letting our group know. Going to find ways that we can help.
We appreciate you guys so much. So thank you.
Deb, thank you very much personally. From everyone at DMI, we're here to help however we can. Go to our website, www.downtown.org, to sign up for any future events. Lots of great conversations like this happening in the next few weeks. We hope that everyone stays safe and as well.